Okay then, this video was done. It was all edited together, it was rendered out, and it was ready for upload. However, before I upload any of my videos, I always review them, particularly the ones that are edited together and aren't just a straight record out of Bandicam, just to check that there are no horrible errors in there or dreadful transitions, anything like that that I want to go back and fix. But it was on reviewing this one that I thought, you know what, I'm kind of missing something here, which I don't quite adequately explain, and that is what this video is for, and what it most certainly is not intended to be. So I'm just going to tack this onto the front of the video, just to make that point, and then after this clip here that I'm recording now will be what was intended to be the video itself. And we'll just have some old school Steve Phipps classics on the screen there while I'm talking. We've got the original Pot Black classic there, the original Luxor classic, and the original Everyone's a Winner classic. I think I'm actually going to start by explaining what this video is not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be shit stirring or causing trouble. It most certainly is not supposed to piss anyone off or upset anyone and make anyone uncomfortable or anything like that. I would hate to do that. And I've really tried hard when I've been putting this video together to stick to that principle. And you will see when you're watching the video that there's some stuff that I've completely pixelated out because I don't think it would be right for it to be in the video. However, the fact remains that these early months of the Fruit Machine emulation scene were a little bit fractious. They were fractious. They were difficult. There were arguments, and it's hard to do this properly and truthfully and accurately without covering some of that. And I've tried to be as accurate, as fair and objective as I can be about this, and I've tried very hard to not put anything in here that could be sort of personally upsetting to anyone. I've also had to confront the fact, which I already knew, which is partly why I've not particularly wanted to revisit over the years, the fuck-ups that I made myself as well. What I do want this to be, however, is almost an accurate documentary. I almost see my role here as being a documentarian and documenting this period of time. Now, I'm going to end up splitting it into two videos. I'm going to do April 2001 to August 2001 is going to be this video, and then the year after that is going to be the video after this. To be honest with you, I just didn't realise quite what I was taking on. Part one was the easy part. This has been a lot harder. It's taken me many hours to do this because I've had to review so much old material. I haven't been able to review everything. There's just too much of it. And the best one in the world, I simply don't have that much spare time, but I have done the best job that I can, and I'm hoping that this will be seen as an attempt to document this period in history of the Fruit Machine emulation scene. But I absolutely cannot stress enough that this is not intended to be an exercise that upsets or annoys anyone or causes any ructions in the scene as it is now, because the Fruit Machine emulation scene in its current incarnation, which started, I would say, November 2016 when Wizard released MFME v5. Since then, I think Fruit Machine emulation has been a very nice place to be. It's a small scene that it used to be, but people are getting on. We're being civilised to each other. There's a mutual respect there, all that kind of thing. So, God, I'd hate for these series of videos to do anything to jeopardise or imperil that. So, I just thought I would just put this talking bit on the front to explain what this video is and what it isn't, because it absolutely is not intended to be any kind of exercise in troublemaking or shit stirring. But at the same time, I'm trying to document things properly and get my facts straight. So it's a little bit of a difficult circle to square in that regard. And once I got into this video, once I started researching it properly, I kind of became determined to do it properly and get it right. So I hope I've struck the right balance on this video in documenting what happened whilst, respecting all the people involved and keeping the video, how can I put it, sort of objective and neutral and not pushing any kind of agenda. So that's it. It's just, I just felt I'd put this bit on the start. What you're going to get straight after this is what was the entire video prior to this, but I thought, you know what, I didn't quite cover what this video is and what I'm not intending it to be. So there we go. Thank you for just listening to this little preamble, and now we will get into the video proper. I'll edit this back in, render it back out, and then it will be ready for upload. Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is going to be part 2 of Fruit Machine Emulation Memories, and it's a kind of an in-betweeny part because I was working on what was supposed to be part 2, and I've been doing a little bit of research and a little bit of planning out of how I'm going to do part 2. It turns out that what was going to be part 2 is now going to be part 3, and this will be part 2 because I just kept hitting upon the same problem. Was that, let me just bring up the dear old Hovel archive here. What I was going to do basically was run from August 2001 to September 2002. That time period saw a lot of, how shall we put it, it was a tumultuous time for the Fruit Machine emulation scene, and it just so happened that I'd kind of documented it fairly well because I was running this site at the time, so I was going to use this as my basis of the events to report on. However, the issue that I kept hitting up against was what happened before August 2001, because there was already stuff happening in Fruit Machine emulation before August 2001. The emulator was already out there. There were, I mean, if you look at that news update for August 2000, sorry, I've got my camcorder. I should probably just be using Bandicam, it doesn't matter. Because if you look at the earliest update on the site is after the emulator's already out, as the freeware version. There's work going on the first DX and all that sort of thing. So everything before that I've kind of lost, and I'm like, I can't remember exactly what happened. And I know that there was stuff before that point in time that I needed to cover. So in the end, what I've done is I have had to go back. If you remember from the first video, the first Fruit Machine Emulations video, I had all those discs which have got my old email archives on them. I've had to go back to them. That's the only thing I could think of to do. And you can see, let's just get this up here. Look at that. This is what has happened as I have been restoring my email archives to a bit of software here. SysTools DBX converter, which will basically open old Outlook Express DBX files. And I'm using the demo version here. It does say it's limited, but I haven't hit any limits yet. If it tells me I'm going to have to register to carry on using it or something like that, I will do it. It's $49. I don't mind chucking that at it. So what I have done here is pulled out one of my email archives from one of those disks. Now I will state up, and that's how many fucking viruses and shit that emails used to have attached to them. I never opened them back in the day, but I was still slightly staggered to see Windows Defender absolutely shit a brick. Because what it does is restore the emails and their attachments to and obviously it must be creating something on the file system. Windows Defender was not happy. Now then, I did say on the last video that I will not be putting any actual emails between myself and anyone else because those are private emails, and I don't think it's right, even 17 years after the fact, to put the exact contents of them up. Let's have something nicer to look at. We'll have that. I will do a video on these, by the way, at one point, because the Sphinx and these Electrocoins are some of the best AWPs ever. That's still to come. However, what I did find in here, and this is, I think, something that I can do, because this was to a public mailing list, it's actually this poll. Look at the date on that. 24th of April 2001 to the CMA lists. And it's Wizard. It's Wizard talking about his MPU4 emulator. It's just MPU4 at this point. It's a large download at around 2.9 megabytes. How times have changed when we have to flag up that it's a large download. Now, this is There are several early references to this, but it does show that Wizard was putting out his emulator. He was kind of, because you've got to remember, it was for sale at the time, so he was maybe trying to drum up a little bit of support or a little bit of sales maybe. And it was on, I think it was on this CMA list here that I first saw this post. And I said in the first part of this video that I was on here, on several fruit machine lists at the time, to get hold of or talk about real fruit machines. And what I have also got in here is my original email to Wizard asking to register the emulator. So I must have seen maybe it was on the CMA mailing list. He had a direct link to the demo, which I will have downloaded. So that's settled out. So I couldn't remember in the last video whether it was a direct link or you had to email him. He did provide a direct link to the demo, which I had downloaded, and I sent him back an email asking questions like, is this really emulation? Is it the real thing? And Wizard got back to me and said, yes, this is real emulation. It runs the real ROMs. It's the same as the real machine. And he let me know how much it cost. And from there, and this is kind of what I'd forgotten here, and I knew we bounced a few emails back and forth, but we were actually emailing each other for the best part of 2.5 months in an entirely civil fashion. And basically, between the two of us almost, we were trying to spread the word about the emulator. We were posting to, or I was posting to Shiva site, another post to the CMA mailing list. It turned up on a main forum as well. And it was all kind of to help Wizard sell the emulator, which I was kind of happy to do because I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I've got the emails there of me paying him the money and my disc arriving. He did send me his postal address, so it was a check in the post job, and then I got the emulator back on a CD. And then what also happened is Wizard was sending me updated versions of the emulator. If you remember that folder that I had in the first video where there were several really old versions of the emulator, so there's an email here where he's actually emailing me version 5.9 of the emulator. I guess as a purchaser of the product, I was being sent updated versions of the emulator, and we were still chatting around making the thing available and trying to get the word out to as many people as possible that there was a fruit machine emulator, but it became clear that it had been around for a while and just nobody really seemed to be paying that much attention to it. So you get this message here from May 2001, for example, which is where Wizard had put a couple of more modern machines. I think it was Bankroller and something else. Pot Black. Bankroller and Pot Black. He was giving away more sort of credits in the demo. The file size had increased to a monstrous 4.1 megabytes. So this went on, and I'm looking at the dates here. We were going from effectively the sort of back end of April when I first emailed him asking how to register, sort of sent in the cash, got my full version of the emulator, and we were emailing each other throughout April, May, June, and into July. And then what happened at the end of June, this is June 2001, Wizard let me know that he had been advised by Barcrest that he was infringing their copyright and that he was to remove the demo version of the emulator from his website. And at that point he was saying that he could no longer supply the demo version of the emulator with any ROMs, and he would not be sending out any more copies of other games. So going into July here, I'm now sort of basically saying, sorry, Wizard, that's really shit. Sorry to hear about that. Barcrest are taking an interest. And what I then said to him was, You know, this emulator of yours is now starting to create a little bit of interest. I've mentioned it over at a visual pinball forum, and some people are showing an interest in it there. And also that they're quite keen to get hold of the emulator executable to see if there's anything that they can do to maybe incorporate some of the VPin main technologies into Fruit Machine emulation. And to that Wizard replies, I'd rather you didn't at the moment because I've got my details in the about box. I don't want to get hassled. You know, it's still got the pricing in there. And, you know, I'll send you a later version shortly. So, and he's also saying that he thinks that the best thing to do is release it as freeware without any ROMs or layouts, because apparently Barcrest have also said that, you know, the real symbols are, you know, copyrighted to them. So at this point, at the start of July in 2001, I'm kind of saying to Wizard that there's actually a reasonable amount of interest at various sites, a little bit of interest now in this emulator. How do we kind of go a little bit more public with it? And what Wizard is saying, very reasonably of course, I don't want it going public at the moment because, you know, it's got my details in there. It's still obvious that it's for sale. So I am going to do, I think the best thing to do is release it as freeware. And then, unfortunately, things start to go a little bit wrong. What then happened is that Wizard did send me a freeware version, but it was also then at that point in time the demo version was kind of out and about, and it was being hacked, obviously to unlock functionality in there. And Wizard, of course, was not happy about that, but was saying, well, nothing I can do about it if the demo's being hacked, that he'd taken out the design and debugging tools, but other than that, it was a fully functional version of the emulator. He was also rather cross with me because I had, at that point, been posting the layouts and the ROMs to the early version of the Hovel. Okay, there is a little bit that needs to be added here. I'm going to splice this in. I'm putting the video together here, but there is an extra bit of information here. Basically what happened is, after Wizard had said that he was going to do the freeware version, he went on holiday. He went on holiday for over 2 weeks by the look of it, looking at the emails back and forth. It's taken a little while. That bit of software that I'm using to get the email archives, it works, it's good. I don't know, there's something about how it functions that it's really slow to get the, doesn't matter how fast your PC is, it just takes a while. So what I've ended up doing is getting different folders from the archives. I've got my sent items, my inbox, and my deleted items, because there's even stuff in deleted items, and I'm kind of cross-referencing and looking at on 3 different PCs that I'm then going between to try and get my facts and my timeline straight on this. So this is extra information, because I really wanted to make sure I got this right, but I've got to be honest with you, it's taken a long time to do. So what happened here is, after the whole bit where Wizard got told Barcrest, by Barcrest, you need to take this down, it's infringing our copyright, Wizard did then say explicitly to me, I think the best thing to do here is release this as freeware. And I did then send him that and say, I'm sorry to hear that, you know, I kind of guess it was on the cards. And then he went on holiday for 2 weeks, and I emailed him several times, and it was like 17 days before we were between emails, which was the longest time we'd gone without email by a considerable margin since back in April. And I emailed him several times, sort of asking, how's it going with the freeware version? You know, that there's loads of people asking me about it, because it had kind of started to reach a little bit of a critical mass between the CMA mailing list, the Fruit mailing list. There was a visual pinball forum where people were chatting about it, some other sources as well. I was getting emailed about it, and I was almost thinking that maybe he's just had enough. I wasn't getting any response, and you've got to think this is 2001. So it's not like we all had mobile data and email wherever you want. So I guess he'd just gone away and had a genuine holiday. I thought he just got fed up with the whole thing. By then it was, I think I've just indicated there, that everyone knew that the demo version was being hacked. And of course the demo version actually had all the functionality in it. It was just kind of greyed out. But nonetheless, I did make a mistake, and during that period of time, I did the first version of the Hovel. There's no archive of that, but what I was doing was putting up 2 layouts and ROMs a day for that period of time, and what happened was, and my idea was, I thought, well, the freeware version's coming. Wizard has said he's going to do a freeware version. He's going to release a freeware version of the emulator with nothing that Barcrest can object to. I've got all the layouts, so what I may as well do is kind of get them out into the public domain so that everyone's got them ahead of the release, so that when the freeware version of the emulator comes, everyone's got something to play. Now, I'm going to repeat myself because I'm editing this back in, and I think I do go on to this again where I just didn't consider that the layout files were, you know, kind of like original creation, and of course, you know, Wizard was a little bit, he'd already had sort of Barcrest knocking on the proverbial door, and he did express to me, you know what, you're going to have Barcrest knocking on your door soon as well, which actually never happened, but yeah, I guess it could have done. But I think I do say later on in the video that this was a mistake. I shouldn't have been releasing the layouts and ROMs to that first version of the Hovel, but in my head it was just, okay, Wizard said he's doing a freeware version, let's get the games out there so that people have got something to play when that comes out. I will now, and what I'm going to do is edit this into this bit there. I'm kind of going through, I've been adding some titles, I'm trying to get it right. I hope you can appreciate, guys, that there's a limit to how much time I can spend on this, because I've got a lot of other stuff going on at the minute, but I've also had some people asking me very politely, where's part 2 of Fruit Machine emulation history? And it's turning out to be far more complicated than I thought it would be, because I've kind of had to do this. This part wasn't supposed to exist, but I think I had to get that period of time from April 2001 to August 2001 covered. So there's going to be a bit of a jump now, because it's going to go to this bit here. You might get some repetition, but I did just want to make that point that I think the real problem here was there was this 17-day gap where I got no responses from Wizard whatsoever, and it turns out it was the simplest explanation possible. He'd just gone on bloody holiday, and I just thought, yeah, freeware version's coming, let's start getting the layouts and ROMs out there. I was on a 56k modem at the time, so even though the file sizes weren't huge, you're only talking a few megabytes. If you remember what 56k modems were like, they were bad enough on downloads and they were even worse on uploads. So even moving a few megabytes up to like a website was a fairly painful process. But I'll splice this in and we'll return to the video. Now, moving towards the end of July now, we're at the 25th of July 2001. The MSM Fruit Machine emulation community was up and running, the Hovel was up and running, and it was that first explosion of the scene. A lot of people were getting very, very interested in it, and it did kind of take off in quite a large way. And what I had done, I had misinterpreted, I think, Wizard's intentions, because Wizard had sent me the freeware version of the emulator, and I've actually got emails from people. I've gone through some of this stuff. There's a lot in here, so there's a limit to what I can go through, but I have got emails from a certain Reg from over at Desert Island Fruit asking if I can send him the emulator that he's heard about, and my reply is no. I'm sorry, I can't send it because the author has said that he wants to do a freeware version where he doesn't have his details in the about box. That kind of thing. People were asking me for the emulator and I was not sending it to them. I was saying, no, the guy has said he's going to do a freeware version, wait for that. Now, when Wizard sent me a freeware version of the emulator with all that stuff that he wanted stripped out, taken out, I then misinterpreted that as being, okay, here's a freeware release. This is it. This is okay. I'm kind of walking away from it. Here is the freeware release of the emulator. And it was that freeware release that I then uploaded to the Hovel. I had read it wrong. It was not Wizard's intention to have this thing go public and just be up on the web. And I've got a very clear email from him on that point. That was my mistake. And of course, what I should have done is ask, is this something that you want to happen? Because if I would have asked that question, the answer would have been no. I had respected Wizard's wishes up until that point, and like I say, I had the emulator and people were asking me for it, and I was not sending it on because I was waiting for this freeware release that he had said that he was going to do. And frankly, at that point, I'm afraid to say that was about when myself and Wizard had an early falling out, because he was not happy and he did not want the whole thing to go public in the way that it had. I was very apologetic. I said, well, I'm really sorry. It was just so exciting that we had a Fruit Machine emulator, and I thought you sending me this freeware version of the emulator was kind of like, okay, yeah, there you go. It's okay to get out into the world. I also apologised to Wizard and said, look, I'm really sorry. It didn't occur to me that the layouts are kind of original content. They're an original creation. I just kind of had it in my head that they're ROMs, like main ROMs. The ROMs are just the ROMs, but of course with a Fruit Machine emulator layout, you've got that added aspect of the layouts. And I have got an email where I'm saying, I'm really sorry, Wizard, that just didn't occur to me that the layouts were a separate thing to the ROMs. So yeah, it was a mistake, and I've got it in black and white here. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And that then takes us up to the end of July 2001. Wizard was a bit pissed off with me. The freeware version of the emulator was out there. The demo was still being hacked to get the design tools working, because those early versions of the emulator, they had all the design tools and everything was still in there. They were just kind of greyed out. Whereas the freeware version of 5.9 had that code removed. All you could do is load and play layouts. But the demo version that had the tools in it, where you could kind of unlock things, that was then, I'm afraid to say, I am afraid to say, because nobody should have their work hacked, but the people just fell upon this because there was such a pent-up kind of demand or desire for a Fruit Machine emulator. And of course, I guess the first thing that people wanted to do was make their own layouts and get ROMs running in it. So the scenario as we're going into August 2001, which is where I will pick up the history from the Hovel perspective, just because it's a good reference point. I'm not going to read out my own site because that would be rather narcissistic. I'm just using it because it's actually a pretty good documentation of what happened in a chronological order for that first year or so of very tumultuous and fractious Fruit Machine history, when we were getting new forums on practically a daily basis. If you were around at the time, you will remember that. But unfortunately, by that time, myself and Wizard had a first falling out. I had misread the signs. I had thought that this freeware version of the emulator that he'd sent to me was effective. I've got this in black and white here. I have got this in an email to him. I'm really, really sorry. I misread this. I thought that by you sending me this freeware version and knowing that, that there was already publicly stuff happening about this and the MSN emulation community existed, I thought this was kind of a release, and that wasn't actually the case. So that was... yeah, that was an early falling out, but at this moment in time, so as we go into part 3, where we're at, the MSN emulation community exists, the original Hovel exists, we've got a freeware version of the emulator with no design tools or anything like that, but it is known that the demo version, which has got those design tools greyed out, is in the process of being hacked. And it was not, if we're honest, the most not the most gentle genesis of an emulation scene. I have got in this email here, I'm making reference to the fact that I am getting like 50 plus unique emails a day asking about the emulator and talking about it. It had created a little bit of a buzz, and I think that at this point in time people were coming together. We had the emulation, the MSN emulation community, and things were kicking off. How little we knew what kind of a kickoff and what kind of sustained ruckus was going to present itself in that very, very difficult first year of the Fruit Machine emulation community. That will then be part 3. It's probably going to take me a while to put together. It's taken me a little while to do this because I've had to get all these old images mounted and go through and do a little bit of research and find, get me facts straight. So that's where we are. Going into part 3 will be August 2001, which is pretty much just as about the very first DX layout, Viva España DX, was being prepped for release. I will catch up with you in part 3. And just a final little note, if you're going to do it completely, you may as well, I suppose. Now, this is version 5.4 of the emulator. Now, this would have been the one that you needed to unlock with the registration code. You can see there that the design and debug tools are actually in there, but they're greyed out. Now, what happens is if you load a layout into that, you can't put any money into it, and you also don't have the design or debug tools, and of course you then have to register to make that happen. Now, this here, I'm afraid to say, I think is the hacked 5.9, which has come into my possession at some point. You can see there, and so this would have been the hacked version of 5.9, which was the last trial or demo version that Wizard made available. You can see there that the design and debug are active and available. So that was kind of like the first version of the design tool enabled emulator. And this here was the freeware version that Wizard sent to me. Just look at the thing, all those things that are missing there. That's 5.9, that's 5.4, and that's 6. Can you see there? You can literally just load layouts into it. There's nothing else. That's got all the purchase information and everything like that taken out of it. All these versions of the emulator are from 2001. This one here is the one that Wizard sent to me. So, right, okay, here's the freeware version of the emulator, and this is the one that then went up on the Hovel. I'd already been rotating these sort of layouts and ROMs around for a couple of weeks by that point, something like that. And then this is the first version of the emulator that went live, which, so this would have been effectively the first version of MPU 3.4 that you played. If you got it from the Hovel back in the day, and then any of the sites that spawned out of that, it will have been this one that you played. If we have a look at the About box, it's version 6, you can see there. But this one here was, hang on, I can't do a mouse in my left hand. This one was doing the rounds. That was the last version of the sort of demo / trial version, and that's the one that was being, I'm afraid to say, hacked, because people were after making their own layouts. I will just tack this onto the end of that video, and then it will be on to part 3. It's all, you know what, sorry, a little bit of a vent here. It's all quite difficult going back over this, because I've reviewed the MSN emulator. I've pulled out the MSN emulation community archive now as well. That's actually a DBX file, so there's nothing gone into any of the videos yet, but I've pulled that out. Oh my God, that is frantic. It's a bit kind of emotionally draining to go over all this stuff again. And I mean, it's not just the emails between myself and Wizard that I've been reviewing. It's like all the people who were on the Fruit Machine emulation scene early doors. I've got all the emails back and forth between all of them. Some of these people are still around today. I've got to be honest, like I say, it is becoming a little bit draining doing this. I'm not quite sure I fully appreciated the scope of what I was taking on when I thought, yeah, Fruit Machine emulation history, I'll do that. How bad can it be? How hard can it be? And turns out I'm starting to feel a bit dinged up by it all. I hope I'm trying to do these videos in a positive manner, but sometimes when you're covering what is in many ways a difficult period of history, there's no real way to you can't pretend it was something that it wasn't. And these were wonderful times, but also in many ways difficult times. I'll move on to part 3 when I feel capable of taking it on. So, but part 3 will come. I'm not making any promises, but it will happen. I'll see you then.